Welcome to the NCLA Podcast. I am your host, Rachel Mann, and today we're going to be talking about Great Oaks career campuses, which anyone listening to this podcast is probably very familiar with Great Oaks because it's basically a household name. They're doing so many great and wonderful things. If you didn't get a chance to listen to the episode with Harry Snyder, be sure to check that out as well. We have some great things to talk about, and we're going to jump right into it. And to start off, I'm going to ask Dan Cox, who's the Director of Business Operations and also an NCLA board member, Dan, can you just tell us a little bit about your journey in career and technical education and what you do?
Yeah, I'm Director of Business Operations, so responsible for all the facilities, food service, and transportation for our district. Be honest with you, I'm in my 22nd year in career tech, all with Great Oaks, and I very fortunate that I stumbled across it as a math teacher back in 2001 and have served in a lot of different roles, including campus administrator. So we've just been kind of hooked on career tech ever since I walked into Diamond Oaks as a potential math teacher back in 2001. Again, I've been in the district office. This is now my 5th year, part of the time in curriculum, and now we're responsible for the business operations. We have a couple of large renovation projects going on 2 of our 4 campuses. Very exciting. And again, just very fortunate to be part of a great organization and a great team of which we have 4 other important folks along here with me.
All right. Thank you, Dan. And up next, we have Sarah Taylor.
Hi. Kind of like Dan, I also stumbled into career tech, got a job at one of our feeder schools as a high school counselor, and was just blown away in my connections at that. It was in the Laurel area. So we visited the Laurel for the counselor meetings and got to know a little bit about career tech. And then when an opening occurred, I applied and was fortunate to be hired. Love the career tech world. Grew up in a small town with a family business, doing a lot of the types of things that we teach. And so it was just, I felt like a perfect fit. Been with the Oaks since 1999, and I've also did a lot of years with recruiting. So I was the contact with the high schools and talking to kids and parents and showcasing what we do and trying to get them to realize all the benefits. And now I work at the district office for the last several years and have transitioned into doing work-based learning. So also working with kids and teachers to get them out into the real world and get some of those experiences that are so important for them.
Well, thank you, Sarah, and we're very excited to have you on here today. Our next guest is Ted Kirkpatrick.
Hi, I am finishing my 33rd year with Great Oaks, 33rd year in education. It's all been career technical education. I was fortunate that when I got out of college, I found out about the opportunity at Great Oaks and teaching applied math, which was so incredibly transforming me. When I came out of Miami, I was looking, to coach and do all these things. But when I saw how the mathematics being applied to students in carpentry and culinary and how the kids were able to see the application of the math, again, I was hooked. And I knew this is what I needed, that I was going to continue to do. So I spent 15 years in the classroom teaching mathematics, and then moved into administration. I had some curricular roles. My current role is Dean of Satellites. I was also had the fortunate opportunity to spend a couple of years on campus as an administrator as well. So currently, as a Dean of Satellites, we have 29 schools that we have career tech teachers in. It's a way of supporting students that do not come to our campuses, and it's a place where we are trying to continue to grow. So our goal is to help students find a path, whether it be with us or some other means, so that when they leave high school, they know what their next steps are. And again, we have an incredible staff. I appreciate everybody here and others that I have an opportunity to work with.
All right, up next, we have Joel King. Joel, can you share with us a little bit about your work at Great Oaks?
Yes, thanks, Rachel. So I'm kind of the newbie still to career tech. I consider myself. This is just my 6th year in career tech, 3rd year at Great Oaks. So part of the reason that I'm at Great Oaks is because of multiple people on this call, just being in some different meetings when I first got to career tech and hearing about the experiences they had, all the great things that Great Oaks was doing and still doing, made me want to be a part of the team at Great Oaks. So like everybody else, I kind of got into career tech, had spent the 17 years prior to career tech in a comprehensive setting. And just, I wish I would have found it earlier, like some of the other people on the call. There's just so many amazing things happening for students in the secondary and the post-secondary world. And it's just exciting to be a part of what we're trying to do to help students.
All right. And Andy, can you share about your work?
Yes, thanks, Rachel. My name's Andy Hoxema. I have been 22 years with Great Oaks, but I have been 30 years in career technical education. Spent 13 years in the classroom. The last 17 years have been involved in administrative roles within Great Oaks. I am currently the director of adult education or adult workforce development with Great Oaks. I took over the position about 7 months ago, and very excited about the opportunity. Adult education just has so many different facets to it. It's been an exciting pathway and a learning opportunity for me. So, but career tech, I am a fan of it. I think it's very important. For me, I went to a large comprehensive high school, and it was their career tech programs that kept me in high school probably, and pushed me to go into college and into a career pathway. So it's been a great opportunity and a great adventure for me.
Fantastic. And I spent a little bit of time exploring your website, and you have phenomenal offerings at Great Oaks. Can you share about some of these offerings and the strength of Great Oaks that has led to your campus becoming this household name that we mentioned before within the realm of CTE?
With adult education, we currently have 13 full-time programs, and a full-time program is defined by the number of contact hours. So they range from 600 to 900 contact hours or seat hours. We have 10 what we call short-term credentialing programs. Most of them are in the health professions. We have 50 plus part-time and enrichment kind of DIY type classes. And then we also offer customized training for business and industry partners that we're working with. We can provide training to fit their specific needs. We can offer those right there in their facilities, or we can offer them on one of our 4 campuses. We're always, it's important to us to work with that specialized training to provide things in the area of welding, manufacturing, police, fire. We're always looking to upskill our partners' staff needs. But I think, when you talk about why are we a household name, Great Oaks covers 2,200 square miles. And for years, we would mail out to every resident in those 2,200 square miles a catalog for Great Oaks adult education programs. So when I talk with people that are taking an enrichment class or one of our classes, many of them will say, well, I got this catalog in the mail, and I was going through it and very interested in looking at it. Might have been an enrichment class, or it might have been a full-time opportunity. So Great Oaks been around for 51 years, and it truly is a household name.
Rachel, I would add on to that. We just kind of wrapped up celebrating our 50-year anniversary. So I think what I've learned in the short time at Great Oaks is that rich tradition of career tech education and how we started 50 years ago. And as Andy mentioned, the large area that we serve, what's great about that is all of the different career fields that are available in our region and the excellent business partners that we have, and always kind of working with us to help us understand what the needs of this region are and how we can provide the training at a secondary and post-secondary setting has been key, I think, to the success of the district over the years. I think another key thing for us is with that large geographical area is the 36 districts that feed into us, and trying to understand the needs of those districts. And our 4 campuses each kind of have a different flair because of where they're located geographically. But I think what's interesting is being able to offer consistent programming to students. And as Ted mentioned, some of the pieces that we're doing with satellites, and now really trying to figure out how we can blend the secondary and the post-secondary with Andy's adult ed programs. So I think there's just, and right now, especially with the economy the way it is and the need for workers, we're definitely at the forefront of trying to help fill those gaps.
I think you'll find our offerings is a combination of the traditional core, especially on the campuses. How and we'll get into this, I guess, later, but it's the delivery of those basic core, between welding, auto mechanics, cosmetology, etc. And then what are those new things that we are trying? And again, we've got the things on the campuses, and then kind of by accident almost, we ended up having, again, without trying, certain programs on campuses and certain programs on the satellites. We'll let Ted speak to that with very little to no overlap in that. And then that's, again, we'll get into that later, is how do we take advantage of that? And if that is an issue as far as the pathways, how do we fix it? So Ted?
Well, I was going to share. So we have satellites in 29 of our 36 feeders. And that is one of the goals, is to get career tech programming in all 36 of our districts. We started, it's interesting, we started middle school career tech programming really before most districts were doing it, because the funding didn't really get started till about 4 or 5 years ago. But the leaders back in the day felt that it was important that we start exposing kids at the middle school to different career tech experiences, to expose them to different pathways, so that they kind of get an idea when they go into high school what they might be looking at. So I see that there's like 3 different areas of a jump off. You've got middle school going to high school, trying to get kids to have a kind of an understanding of what's going on. But then you've also got at the 10th grade level, kids right now have to make a decision. Do I want to go to a career center? Do I stay at my school? Or then again, as Andy alluded to, the post-secondary piece, coming from, you're graduating, what are my next steps? And, I feel as a satellite, working with satellites, that our instructors should be helping kids at the affiliates at every one of those positions, along with working with the campuses to do the same thing. Our job is to get kids experiences that they can get an idea of what they need to do for their future. It may not be with Great Oaks, and that's okay, as long as we've done the job of helping them figure out what it is their interests are. And just a couple things that we offer with our satellites. The pathways we have: engineering, we've got medical bioscience at the high school, we have education, business, agriculture, construction. Those are the main pathways that we offer, the career programs at the high school. Our middle school really has IT and STEM. Those are our major focuses there.
Thank you so much. It's so exciting to hear about these programs. And for our listeners, be sure to expand on the details of this podcast and click on the Great Oaks link to their 360 virtual tours. And the next time you hear someone say that education hasn't changed in the last 100 years and is still geared towards the Industrial Revolution and factory workers, have them check out what's happening. I was so impressed to open up the Animal Science and Management link. That was the first one I looked at, and they have rabbit wards and reptile wards, and just every program is doing phenomenal work. So definitely check out those tours. Now, the next question I have is, what's next? Can you share what you're moving towards, and if you have any plans for expanding all of the amazing things that you're already doing?
So Rachel, I'll talk a little bit about what we're trying to do to expand access and programming to students. So I guess kind of going back to my experience in a comprehensive, and given what I know now about career tech, I try to think about what would I have wanted to know as a middle school principal or high school teacher, and how could we have created more opportunities. And I think what we're also understanding in conversations with our affiliate districts is that they've got about 15 to 30% of their students that, for whatever reason, get into their junior or senior year and realize I should have gone the career tech route, or I thought I was going to go to college and maybe I can't afford it, or I've decided that I don't want to go to college at this point. And so what we're trying to figure out is, instead of having all of our programs as a traditional 2-year program, how can we look at having multiple entry and exit points into those programs? How can we extend access to career tech, and kind of what Ted and I would call some unique satellite programming, not a traditional satellite. And then working with Andy on some ways to do some short-term credential opportunities to have high school students with adult students. So just a couple to expand a little bit on that is, we are currently right now with Andy, they had moved one of their programs to a day program and a hybrid program, which left an instructor on Tuesday, Thursday, some time to work with some students. So we currently are offering MSSC modules to students. There's a group of students that come in the morning, some of them stay in the afternoon, and some of those students are here all day. And we've tried to keep it around the school schedule at that campus to eliminate the transportation barrier. So that's something else we've really tried to talk about, is what are some of the barriers to career tech education, and how do we reduce some of those barriers? Because what we really feel like is, ideally we would like them to come to a campus program. We feel like that's the best possible experience for a student, but we also understand every student's not going to come to us, but it doesn't mean that they shouldn't get access to quality career tech programming.
On the adult ed perspective, in reaching out to high school students, we realize that this is a target audience we have to reach to. Over the last probably 10 years, our average age in adult education has been a student that was 35 to 40, now to an average age in adult education in a full-time program or short-time is probably around 25 to 30 years old. So we're getting more students from the high school that are 18, 19 years old that are like, yeah, I need to do this. So with Joel's guidance, we've been able to reach out to many of our affiliate high schools, talk to those seniors that are like, yeah, I'm not sure if I'm going to college now, or I need to get a head start on a career. And this has been great. So as Joel said, we're offering some MSSC credentialing, but also we have students that are in a EMT program, emergency medical technician program. It's 100 hours, and it's during the regular school days that we're offering this. In the same hours as our campus. But we have students participating in phlebotomy classes, STNA classes, and now we're looking at some students to get involved with our full-time programs, such as heavy equipment operations. So it's been a great addition to our adult education portfolio.
And Rachel, I'd like to add in a little with satellites. Joel was mentioning some of the how we're trying to look at things a little bit differently. One of the barriers a number of our schools have is their size. It's hard to run a program at a high school when maybe the class size is under 100 students, and their interests are spread out. We have some kids going to the campuses, which makes it even smaller pool. So one of the things we're looking at is potentially putting together, I'll call it like a magnet program, where if we could draw kids from 3 or 4 schools who are close in proximity, could we create some programming in that manner to help support those students? Similarly, what we're looking at next year is we have a student actually in a school that doesn't have agriculture science. They're planning to go to a district where we do offer agriculture science and actually go to that school just for those courses, and then come back to the school that they're taking their regular academics. So again, we're just trying to provide more opportunities for students that may not have it because the programming is not offered.
Just want to add to that real quick as far as what we're doing with our physical spaces. As someone mentioned, we celebrated our 50-year anniversary. Our buildings are all approximately that old. So we're doing some pretty serious remodeling on all of them, basically, but 2 are going under extensive. So what's coming out of that is we're creating a lot more flexible, a lot more common spaces. So we're trying to move towards a more personalized learning approach where You may have students who are a little bit more on their own schedule, doing a little bit more independent work or small group work. And we're trying to create those spaces for that. And we think at Laurel Oaks and what we're going to have when we come out of Live Oaks is we're going to accomplish that. The other big change is through our special needs offerings. We've gone from the 2 or 3 special needs coordinator model to intervention specialists. So we've gone from 2 or 3 special needs devoted staff members on each campus to more like 7 or 8. So that required creating some more flexible spaces for those folks and how they work with students. And obviously they are in the classrooms much of the time, but we also wanted to create, and we had to create some spaces, basically an intervention area, which did not exist prior to these renovations. So that's just a couple of ways that we're trying to. And then, of course, that along with flexibility and giving students freedom, along with keeping them safe at the same time. So that's what we're in the middle of right now.
All right. Thank you. It's so exciting to hear everything that's happening. And I can't wait to get out, and I'll be in your area in August, and I'm looking forward to actually getting to see some of this in person. And now you've talked some about your adult ed and satellite programs. Can you tell us some more about this and what it looks like?
Well, Rachel, I'll start and I'll talk a little bit about our adult education programs. As I kind of mentioned before, we're trying to reach out to everyone from 17 years old up to in their late 60s or 70s, to try to find specific needs. As I said, in adult education, we have 13 full-time programs. These programs can range from police and fire academies to manufacturing, healthcare professions. But we also offer, the full-time programs will range from 600 to 900 hours. Our short-term programming, a lot of it focuses around health professions. There's such a need for people to have phlebotomy, EKG, LPN programs. We're trying to meet those specific needs of our surrounding areas and industry partners. The other thing is I kind of said, we reach out to a lot of part-time people that are looking for enrichment type classes. We've noticed that a lot of our students that are coming in may be baby boomers. They've retired. They're looking for something else to keep them busy. So they might be taking a class that I'll call it a DIY type class, do it yourself. And these people might be coming in for basic residential home electricity, or they can take a commercial electricity class. These are typically 5 hours an evening. They'll range for 6 weeks, 2 nights a week. And we get a lot of interest. And then some of those people will say, well, gee, I want to take more of a more in-depth course, and they'll do that. They might also be taking construction, carpentry type classes, but we also have a lot of enrichment classes. A lot of these baby boomers are like, well, gee, I'm looking for a new career path, and I'd like to get involved with a culinary type field. So we have some basic culinary classes or baking classes, cake decorating classes. A lot of these things people are watching on TV, and it's like, gee, how do I get involved with that? So those classes have been very beneficial to our adult education program. We offer over 50 of these type personalized part-time classes, and typically we'll offer them 4 times a year. So they've been very helpful to us. And then, as I said, we also offer customized training, providing specific skills to our manufacturing and industry partners.
And I'll go ahead with satellites. So what a satellite program is it's a career tech Great Oaks teacher that is actually teaching within one of our affiliate schools. So an example would be at Mason High School, we have teaching professions. A number of years ago, they came to us and said, look, we have a lot of kids that are interested in education. At the campus level, we have an early childhood program, but these are students that are looking more secondary. So We started the program there, and it's a very robust program, but the instructor, again, is a Great Oaks teacher teaching in Mason High School. We want our teachers to be just like the school that they're working in. So you may not know that they're a Great Oaks teacher if you were to just, walk through the building. But but the students are, when they're in the classes, they are enrolled in a Great Oaks class. One of the benefits for us that some of these kids, specifically teaching professions, there's college credit available. So kids, when they leave us, they can go on to a state university, knock out one of their intro to ed courses. So again, our teachers, they are embedded in the schools. They, unfortunately, they have to deal with the Great Oaks initiatives, but they also have to deal with their affiliate school initiatives. So there's, two different administrators that they have to work with. So it can be a challenge. But again, we have a total of 94 teachers that are in those 29 districts. And we also have a program in a hospital and also at a university.
No, I just wanted to kind of say one of the things that we're working on, especially everybody else that's on this call, except me probably, is working really hard to try to sort of blur the lines between on campus and satellite and adult ed. And I think Joel kind of referenced that earlier, which is, it is a real challenge. And I think we've been able to do that on a small scale. And we just got to keep working towards that, where from a student's perspective, it's not really three separate things, but it's one potentially interconnected pathway. And that's where we can really leverage our size to do that. And I think it's underway, and I think it's on its way, and we're not going to be able to stop it, but we just got to make sure we do it right, which is really a new phenomenon for us, instead of really three separate silos.
And Dan, that's what I was going to talk about, is just the fact that both Andy and Ted are willing to look at some different ways to offer programming. And I think that the hard part for us is sometimes that geographical piece, and sometimes trying to do it too large a scale instead of starting smaller and scaling faster. And so I think that's the part we're still trying to understand, is how much can we blur? How much flexibility do we have? I will say, I think that our Ohio Department of Education has been great to work with, and trying to understand what are some new possible ways to offer career tech, because they want to see more access for students. So I think that's really kind of our big challenge as we move forward, is what are the limits, and really what can we figure out?
Wow, I am just amazed. You've created this empire, and it's exciting to hear all that's happening, and that you're really accomplishing some of the things that people keep saying needs to happen in education. Well, now it is happening. One of the things that you mentioned was that part of your success was sending catalogs, of course, offerings earlier on. What are you currently doing for recruitment, retention, and marketing your programs? It sounds like this is pretty well known what's happening, but what recommendations do you have for folks listening in who are working on these areas?
Well, I think they've kind of tasked me with answering that, because that's kind of what I did for a lot of years. I think this past couple of years with COVID and the shutdown, and people not allowing visitors, access has been limited. So we've been forced to kind of look at what have we done well, what can we try new. I think our teachers and our staff have been really great about setting up virtual tours and sessions with parents. We've contracted with a company called At the Core to do some parent coffee chat type events, as we're trying to look at our district as a whole. It's kind of a challenge because we are so large and so different in those 36 school districts as far as economic level, or, what is the expectation for parents for their kids that live in those districts is different in a rural area versus one of our more affluent areas or whatever. So it's really hard sometimes to come up with what is the right message. And I think we've gotten better at trying to look at what's the message for this area or this area, so that they can all understand career tech is for everybody. You don't have to be in a certain bucket to be able to benefit from it. So I think that's been kind of the challenge as we've gone forward. Again, with the changes that they've all talked about, and trying to work, satellite and campuses and adult ed, so that it isn't separate silos, but all working together, then how do we communicate that out to our district and to the different schools and the parents and the students so that they understand, it can be a seamless start in middle school, take a satellite type program, and then go from there into a campus, or if a campus isn't right for you, take a program at the satellite at your high school. So it's been a challenge, and I don't know that we've done it right yet, but we're still working on it. And you mentioned earlier, like the virtual tours on our website, we've done things like that. We've just developed some info sheets for each of our programs to try to be a better communication tool to help people understand what it is that we do. So I think it's an ongoing process. I'm not sure we have any answers, but it's just continuing to look for new ideas and ways to reach people and help them understand what we do.
Rachel, if I can kind of talk a little bit about what adult education is doing in the way of retention and recruitment. Our retention rate for an OTC, an Ohio Technical Center, is very good. We're around 95%. When you compare our retention rate compared to other post-secondary institutions or higher ed institutions, we're very strong. I think the average in Ohio, when you look at all of higher education, it is probably around 25 to 30%. And I think, why is that the case? I truly believe it's because many of our students are coming for a focused, skilled training. They're not looking for additional advanced academic classes or anything like that. They want to come in, they want to get a skill, they want to be able to go out and work. And so we kind of promote that we can provide that skilled training in less than a year. Thanks to Dan, our facilities, our students are very impressed with the technology, the appearance of our facilities, creates a very inviting environment for our students. Then also, we're also economically priced compared to many of our other post-secondary institutions. So students will see a value of what they're getting for the program. We also offer grants and other kind of financial planning for each of our students. And I think the other thing that is really important is that we provide personalized service and training for our clients. For our students that are coming in, we're providing some of that hand-holding to be able to walk the student through, how do I apply for a class? How do I get the financial needs to be able to move forward to pay for the class? So it's a lot of initial hand-holding to be able to support the students. It's kind of that servant leadership, so that we are there to support our customer, support them as they move forward in a career pathway. In recruitment, as Sarah was saying, we're always looking to be able to reach out and be able to look at new ways to reach out to possible clients. Over the years in adult education, we probably have a budget, a large budget for marketing. And a lot of that was spent on printing hard catalogs and things like that. And that was just very expensive. I mean, sending out to 250,000 households, we were looking at $300,000 in a budget to be able to print catalogs and mail them out. It's not very effective. When we talked with our students, most of them will say they found out about our programs from word of mouth. They found out from somebody that they were working with, took a class at Great Oaks. We also found that social media is a very strong way to connect to our clients right now. So we're looking at some non-traditional type of approaches for marketing. We're looking at Snapchat. We're looking at TikTok. We're looking at specific direct mailers to mail out to business industries. If we have programs, STNA is a very in-demand type career, but it's typically a low wage. It's an entry-level type position. So we know that in our target market, we're looking for people that are in that poverty level of income and be able to encourage, here's a new career pathway. And then we try to provide financial resources for them to be successful. But we still do some of the traditional things. We still do have some printed material. We do run TV and commercials, radio, printed material. We just connected with one of our local CBS affiliates here, And this year we have started what's called Made in the Trades. So each month they've come into our campuses and focused on one of our adult full-time programs, and they've been very successful. It's great to be able to have the people in our community be able to see that, gee, we offer heavy equipment, or offer advanced manufacturing type programming, and people get to see what it looks like inside of our lab and our facilities. So that's been very helpful for us.
Just to kind of chime in also some of the things Andy was talking about, one of the other challenges I think we have, because we are so large and having 4 distinct campuses, is just helping people to understand that Great Oaks is the same as Live Oaks and Laurel Oaks and Diamond Oaks and Scarlet Oaks. I know that's a challenge at the high school level. When you're talking to parents and kids, it's, oh, what is this Great Oaks? I know about Diamond Oaks because it's close to me or whatever. So that's always a challenge too, as with our size, of being able to get that message out so it's consistent at the, whatever level and whatever community we're in, and helping with that recognition and helping people to realize we're all part of the one unit. So that's a challenge with the marketing and in our messaging and how we do it, and being able to reach the right people.
When I was going through your website and it was seeing the names for the different campuses, I thought, wow, that is so cool, because most people identify their campuses, at least here in Arizona, based on its location. It's the West Mix South Campus or Pima JTED. They do theirs by location as well. So I can see the confusion, but I also really love the way that you've named your campuses and the whole word of mouth piece. That's huge within what we do, and also adding in those social media pieces. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is you're doing some very innovative work, and education. We know that as a whole, outside of career tech and then sometimes within CTE, can be slow to change. What obstacles have you had to overcome, or challenges that you're facing in moving the needle and approaching all of these great things that you're doing? And what advice do you have for folks who are listening in?
So, Rachel, I'll start off with this. This is the part that it might sound a little weird, but I really enjoy trying to figure this part out and how we overcome the challenges. And I'll say, I think we're facing the same challenges that everybody else is facing, and just hearing the different ways that people are approaching it. But I'll go back to March of 20, when the pandemic really hit us and we had to shut down. I think that caused not just Great Oaks, but everybody to look at things and really think about, what are we doing and how are we doing it? And are there things that we can learn from this? So I think early on, we realized there were some things we needed to change up and look at, maybe allowing ourselves to try some things differently than we had in the past. So I'll just kind of start with technology. I think we kind of understand now that we are just scratching the surface of the ways that we can use technology to deliver instruction to students. I think for career tech, and especially for us, our students, what we learned through the pandemic is they still wanted those hands-on learning experiences. They're coming to a campus, they're a part of an adult ed program, they're part of a satellite program because it's different than what they're doing in their other classes. So I think for us, it was, how do we leverage the technology and deliver instruction in a way that allows for more of that? So what we're trying to understand right now is, if we can personalize and flex some of the academic pieces, what does that create for a student on the career tech side? Is it possibly that they can get out and work sooner? Can they work more in their field? We've also talked about, is it a way for a student to take more career tech? So maybe by completing some of my academics sooner online, I could double up in programs. So maybe I'm doing HVAC and I'm doing welding at the same time. And I think that's exciting for our students. I think it's also exciting for our staff, because who doesn't want students in their class that are just absolutely passionate and want to learn that material? I think it's also giving us that opportunity, kind of going back to that multiple entry and exit point. So we talk about, it's really important for a student to figure out what they want to do, but it's also important to figure out, this maybe isn't the career field for me. But I think the way our system is set up is that once you kind of figure out it's not for you, depending on how far you're in that journey, sometimes there aren't a lot of options. And so what we've talked about is, if we really mean that we're We want students to understand if it's not for them, but then what is the next step for that student? Not, hey, go back to your home district. You don't have an opportunity for anything else, or you're going to have to wait until next year. How do we change that up right at that point? I think the systemic barriers, just like you said, education has been set a certain way for so long. And I think one of the biggest things we have sometimes is we want to keep things set up and organized in a way that's easy for us as adults, but doesn't always meet the needs of the learners. And so I think as we hear more from our students about what they need and what they want out of their experience, and we listen to that and we put those things into action, I think that's where we're going to make our biggest gains. I think the other thing, and if everybody's not muted, they'll probably laugh. I'm guilty of, hey, let's jump in and do all this right now. And I think what I'm learning and what's great about our team is understanding that we can do it on a smaller scale. So some of these things that we talked about, the MSSC piece, for example, we had an affiliate district who is very open and very willing to try new things. So we had 3 of their students who came in October, November, and December to kind of help us pilot. So I think as we're building things, we're trying to do more of that. How do we find a small school or a few students that are willing to try this, that we're willing to work with? And one of the great things about our district is we're trying to remove some of the financial barriers. So like in those, we've said, hey, let's just do it. Let's not worry about who's getting what funding or all those pieces. Let's see how this works. Then let's try to figure out the sustainability piece as we're going.
Just want to add a couple of broad things about the slowness to change and some of the obstacles. I think what we found, and I think it's a little bit within our control moving forward, is we're always building the plane while we're flying it kind of idea. We're very reluctant to kind of pause and stop and plan and then kind of have a refresh, reborn program, whatever you want to call it. We're trying to keep doing what we're doing and get really good at those traditional things, and then kind of tweak them and change them while they're rolling along. And then especially the things that are being offered on multiple campuses, it just makes that much more complicated. Not that we can't do it, and I think we're doing a good job. I just think sometimes it's easier to kind of start from scratch, I guess, than it is to, continue to tweak things that have been in place for a really long time. The other one, I think, Joel mentioned earlier, is the state ODE. They do seem to get it. Just use an example of flex credit, which has been around for a long time, and it's certainly not a career tech specific initiative, even though we certainly can take advantage of it. But when you look at it and go, oh, well, that looks like a great idea, that could solve a lot of issues and create some different possibilities for us on paper. But then when you actually get in and try to do it, it's not quite as simple. And there's other things that pop up. Well, did you think about licensure? Did you think about funding? Did you think about this? So that's a challenge, but at least it's there on paper and something that we can work with. And Joel does do a nice job of saying, well, what if, and everybody on the call and our district as a whole, we're certainly not afraid to jump in and try things. But that's just a couple of kind of broad obstacles that I see to big change or implementing new initiatives.
Well, and that's it. That's refreshing to hear that the what ifs are progressive instead of that's not the way we do things, or this is how things have always been done. So that's fantastic to have that openness and willingness to do these pilots and to try new things. Now, the last piece I have for you is, what advice do you have for folks who are listening in, who are looking to replicate some of these initiatives that you're implementing?
Basically, what I just referenced is, if possible, it does make things a little bit easier if you can start from scratch. We seem to struggle in how to do that. And I think maybe in some cases our size works against us. A little easier, possibly Ted can speak to it in a satellite environment, especially when you have a affiliate school principal. They're not really sure exactly what they want, but they know they want to do something. It's like, okay, well, let's try that. Not quite as easy to do that on our campuses. At least it seems like it. when we're trying new initiatives, whether we're tweaking something or taking down barriers or starting something from scratch, you have to have somebody to own it. And we seem to take a little bit more of a team approach. And I think that's something that we can work on is, okay, here's the goal. Here's all these people are going to have to contribute, but who is it that is ultimately responsible to make it happen? Many hands make light work, but you got to have somebody who's going to lead it, basically. And I think we do that with varying degrees of success. And I think the other advice I would say is, as you're trying new things and you're putting new initiatives in place, is don't forget about the climate and culture aspect. And especially at the ground level, the students or the instructors, along with students, that you're asking to do something different or you're asking to make a change, just be cognizant of the kind of emotional side and the climate side, not just well, here's a plan, it ought to work, and here's what we're going to do. And I think that, and I feel like we do a pretty good job with that, but that's something we can always improve.
And if I could add to what Dan was saying, so from a satellite perspective, one of the biggest things is obviously the communication and obviously the building administration that you're working with, but also it really starts higher up. You want to make sure that, the executive teams of the districts understand what it is you're trying to do, as well as at the site. The other piece is showing them, if they're hesitant, as Dan mentioned, should I do this? Take them out to where you've already got existing programs that are working. Usually, almost whenever a building principal sees what's going on, sees the excitement, the engagement, it starts to click. And then a lot of times they'll end up communicating with the schools that you're already partnering with to see how it can be successful. One of the great things I know with Career Tech, fortunately, is that if it's something we don't own, we will seek out other career centers around us that do. Career Tech is so good when it comes to sharing ideas and working together. That's just something that helps us as well. So again, that communication piece is key. Showing new schools what it looks like usually is one of the best ways to get them hooked and wanting new programming.
And if I can, I'll just jump in for the adult education side. I think sometimes as administrators, we have to think outside of that traditional box that we have for adult education. One of the things with our customized training, we're trying to build taking our training skills out to business and industry. So examples might be an STNA, a state tested nursing aid, nursing homes are needing these all over the place. So can we take our training right there and provide those services in-house for them? We do that a lot also with businesses that are looking for upskilling their staff in Microsoft Office. Typically, we do a lot of Excel training where we go out to the business and industry. They pay us to come in. We'll do, it might be 3 days of training, 1 day a week. We come in for 2 to 3 hours at a time. That's very helpful. In manufacturing, it might be welding opportunities. I think also we have to look outside of our typical age group and look at younger students. We need to look at those students that are making the choice in high school to say, okay, I'm not going to college, but I need skills to be able to go out and be successful in a career and to be able to talk to those students and provide opportunities for them. And then lastly, we need to look at our instructors that we have in adult education and improve their instructional delivery. We've been focusing on this for the last few years. And I think it's been very helpful. Many of our instructors are coming from industry. They don't have that teaching experience. And especially as our demographics get younger and younger, we have to improve our instructional techniques also.
Rachel, and I would add too, this is something that when Dan was director of teaching and learning that we talked about quite a bit, is sometimes when you're doing really well, it's hard to say, let's try to do something different because it's working. So I think sometimes you have to ask yourself, like, okay, if we do it different, what are the possibilities? How much better could we be? How many more students could be served or have access to that programming? And I truly believe no one got into education for any reason other than to help students. And so I think sometimes that hesitation is, well, what if it doesn't work? And what if we're not as good as we were? And so I think ensuring that you're still going to have that level of success that you had, but how can you increase that? And I think learning from and being willing to say, okay, what we did here didn't work out the way we had intended. How do we learn from it? Because I think that's sometimes what happens too, is it doesn't go as planned. And then it's just like, well, that's no good. We'll just toss it aside. No, there are things we can learn from it. And if the intent was at the beginning to help more students, we just have to keep trying until we find the way to make it work.
Rich, I'll just add one more thing that kind of goes along with what Joel was saying. I think we're, like a lot of people, we're guilty a lot of times of trying to solve a problem before we define the problem, or trying to define or trying to improve something before we lay out the target. It's, and back to one of your questions, like which needle are we trying to move? What is it that we're trying to accomplish? And I think if you define it well, then I think that makes it a lot easier to get everybody on board, especially existing instructors that you're trying to kind of aim a program in a little different direction, because a lot of our career tech teachers have been here for a long time. And again, in their mind, they are successful. And I think that's something we have to evaluate. Are they successful enough? And at this, can we just get a little bit better, get really, really good at what we're doing? And if there are some new things we want to do, then let's do that, but not at the expense of something that's really pretty positive. So I think it's really defining very, very clearly what it is you're trying to do, and then taking the time to get the buy-in for that, and then moving it forward. And you got a lot better chance of success that way. And that seems very obvious, but we like a lot of people, I think, are guilty of either rushing or skipping that step altogether.
And I think too, along with that, Dan, is that, it takes work to make those changes. And sometimes I think we're all a little complacent with where we're at. And I think that's one of the good things that's come out of the last couple of years, that, COVID forced us to try a lot of new things that maybe we wouldn't have tried. And so I guess the advice is to just keep trying, because, you're put into new situations. And when you try new stuff, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But if it's moving you forward, it's all good.
Well, that's so true. And you're being great role models for the young people that are watching what you're doing, and showing them that if you're going to be the next generation of innovators, this is how you do it. You try things. If it works, that's great. And if it doesn't, you're still learning. What can we do differently? This has been such a great conversation, and I appreciate each of you giving your time today and sharing these best practices. If you're listening in, be sure to expand on the details, and you'll find the contact information if you would like to reach out and learn more about each of these initiatives. And for the folks listening in, if you would like to be a guest on a future episode of the NCLA podcast, or if you have topics that you would like for us to address, please email info@ncla-cte.org. And thanks again.